Alien Happiness Commission, study how humans transform ordinary days into special occasions. Part 1. X stared at the numbers on the screen for the third time that morning. They still made no sense. The junior researcher had been compiling happiness data for the Galactic Confederation's Wellness Initiative for 2 years now, and every species followed predictable patterns. The scored highest during their breeding season. The showed increased satisfaction after territorial expansion. The demonstrated joy spikes following successful hunts, even though most now lived in cities and bought their food from markets. But humans broke every model. According to the data, humans should have been miserable. Their planet was crowded. Their resources were unevenly distributed. They spent enormous portions of their lives performing repetitive tasks for compensation. They had shorter than most sentient species. Their bodies were fragile. Their technology was centuries behind Confederation standards, and their governments could barely agree on basic protocols. Yet their happiness metrics were off the charts. X brought the discrepancy to the attention of senior researcher I, who dismissed it immediately. Cultural reporting bias, I said, without looking up from her own work. Humans probably overstate their emotional states. Primitive species often lack accurate self-assessment capabilities. I accounted for reporting bias, X insisted. I also checked for translation errors, sample contamination, and equipment malfunction. The pattern holds across every human population we've surveyed. They're genuinely happier than they should be. I finally looked at the data. Her secondary eyelids blinked in surprise. This can't be right. Run the analysis again. X ran it 17 more times. The results never changed. Humans, by every measurable standard, experienced more frequent moments of joy than any other species in the Confederation. They smiled more. They laughed more. They reported higher life satisfaction despite having more problems than species that reported being miserable. The discovery reached the Happiness Commission during their quarterly review. Commission director examined the findings with the kind of intense scrutiny usually reserved for potential security threats. The implications were staggering. If humans had discovered some method for generating happiness, some technique or technology or biological advantage, it could revolutionize wellness across the entire galaxy. We need to understand this mechanism, announced. If humans can manufacture contentment in suboptimal conditions, we must learn how they do it. Millions of our citizens are suffering from satisfaction deficits despite living in objectively superior circumstances. The problem was real and growing. Across the Confederation, advanced species were experiencing a wellness crisis. They had automated away most labor, yet reported feeling purposeless. They had eliminated scarcity, yet found life boring. They had achieved unprecedented safety and stability, yet complained of emptiness. Psychologists called it the abundance paradox. The more comfortable life became, the less satisfied people felt. And yet humans, living in relative chaos and uncertainty, were happy. The Commission authorized a comprehensive field study. X volunteered immediately, driven by curiosity that bordered on obsession. I agreed to lead the mission, though she remained skeptical of the entire premise. The third team member was N, a behavioral specialist known for his meticulous adherence to research protocols. Together, they would embed with human populations, observe their daily activities, and identify whatever mechanism humans use to generate their inexplicable joy. They expected to find pharmaceutical interventions. Perhaps humans had developed compounds that stimulated pleasure centers more efficiently than Confederation medicine. Or maybe they had genetic modifications that predisposed them to optimism. Some researchers theorized humans might possess unique neural architecture that processed rewards differently. They packed accordingly, scanning equipment to detect chemical enhancements, genetic analysis tools to identify biological modifications, behavioral tracking software to map decision patterns, and brought 1,200 pages of standardized observation protocols. They were prepared for every possibility. Accept the truth. They landed in Portland, Oregon on a Tuesday morning in October. The city was smaller than most Confederation settlements, but dense with activity. Humans rushed along streets, entered and exited buildings, transported themselves in primitive wheeled vehicles. The researchers had arranged to observe a typical family unit, who had agreed to allow alien presence in their home for 3 weeks. The first day passed unremarkably. Robert worked from home, conducting business through a computer terminal. His partner, Lisa, departed early for her job at a medical facility. Their 2 offspring, Jake and Emma, attended an educational institution. The family reconvened in the evening, consumed a meal together, and engaged in minimal recreation before sleeping. It was extraordinarily ordinary. X documented everything, searching for signs of the happiness mechanism. I scanned for chemicals and cross-referenced behaviors against protocol databases. They found nothing unusual. The second day started identically. Then, around 1800 hours, everything changed. Lisa arrived home carrying a large box. Robert immediately smiled, a facial expression X had learned to recognize as indicating pleasure or amusement. The children ran to the kitchen, making high-pitched vocalizations that the translator rendered as excited squealing. "It's time," Emma announced, as if this explained everything. The family began removing items from cabinets, plates, utensils, and several containers of what appeared to be decorative materials. Robert retrieved a flat, circular food item from a cold storage unit. Lisa ignited small wax cylinders attached to its surface. The family gathered around this arrangement and began producing synchronized vocalizations, a behavior the database identified as singing. X's equipment detected no chemical enhancements, no neural stimulation. The humans were generating apparent joy from arranging food and making noise. "What is the purpose of this ritual?" Anne asked, recording every detail. "It's Jake's birthday," Lisa explained, as if this answered the question. X consulted the database. A birthday marked the anniversary of an individual's emergence from gestation. Every organism experienced this event annually, automatically, by virtue of continued existence. It required no effort, marked no achievement, and held no objective significance. "What accomplishment does Jake celebrate?" I asked. The humans looked confused. "No accomplishment," Robert said. "He's just turning 12. It's his special day." Special. The word appeared frequently in human communication, but its application seemed arbitrary. X noted that humans designated certain days as special, despite those days being objectively identical to all other days. This day contained the same 24 hours as the previous day, the same solar radiation levels, the same gravitational constant. Nothing had changed except the humans' decision to treat it differently. Yet they consumed expensive food, gave Jake wrapped packages containing purchased items, and maintained elevated mood states for hours, all to celebrate something that required nothing from Jake except not dying for another year. X was baffled. The confusion intensified over the following days. The researchers documented increasingly inexplicable behaviors. On Thursday, the family designated the evening meal as taco night, despite consuming similar food items regularly without ceremony. The mere presence of folded corn shells filled with seasoned protein somehow transformed dinner into an event. Everyone smiled more. They lingered at the table longer. They acted as if this meal mattered, even though they would consume another meal the next day, and the day after that, forever until they died. At Robert's workplace, which X visited on Friday, the humans engaged in even stranger behavior. They gathered in a common area to celebrate Susan's last day before vacation. They gave her cards covered in words expressing goodwill. They consumed cake, a sweetened bread product that served no nutritional purpose beyond pleasure. They spent 45 minutes engaging in social bonding over Susan's temporary absence from work duties. Susan had accomplished nothing. She was simply exercising standard leave protocols that every worker received, yet the humans treated this as momentous. Perhaps humans require more frequent positive reinforcement, and suggested reviewing the data. Their primitive neural structure may need constant validation to maintain baseline function. But X noticed something else. The humans didn't seem to need these celebrations. They seemed to want them. They actively created reasons to gather, share food, and experience joy together. When no obvious occasion existed, they invented one. On Sunday morning, Robert announced at breakfast that today was Pancake Art Day. He proceeded to cook pancakes, a flat grain-based food, but shaped them like animals and objects. This had never been designated an official holiday. No cultural tradition demanded it. Robert simply decided that today would involve shaped pancakes, and this decision alone transformed the meal into something the family would remember and discuss for days afterward. X watched Emma request a dinosaur-shaped pancake and squeal with delight when Robert delivered it. The food tasted identical to normally shaped pancakes. The child's reaction was disproportionate to the stimulus, yet the joy was genuine, measurable in elevated dopamine levels and increased heart rate variability associated with positive emotional states. That evening, X sat in the living room, watching the family play a board game while rain pattered against windows. Nobody achieved anything. No resources were exchanged. No territory was gained. They simply sat together, moving pieces across cardboard, laughing when events favored them and groaning dramatically when they didn't. And they were happy. Genuinely, measurably, inexplicably happy. I remained convinced they were missing something. There must be an external cause, she insisted. Humans don't generate joy from nothing. That's not how psychology works. But X was beginning to suspect that's exactly what humans did. They didn't wait for happiness to arrive. They didn't require significant achievements or rare events to justify celebration. They simply decided that ordinary moments deserved joy, then behaved as if this arbitrary decision was real and meaningful. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. Part 2. The research team expanded their observations across 3 continents, documenting human behavior in diverse settings. Everywhere they looked, the pattern repeated. Humans transformed mundane moments into special occasions with nothing more than intention and shared agreement. In Chicago, X observed an apartment building where residents gathered every Tuesday evening in the courtyard. They called it Taco Tuesday and treated this weekly assembly with the reverence other species reserved for religious ceremonies. Nobody had mandated this gathering. No authority figure required attendance. The residents simply decided that Tuesdays were for tacos, and this decision alone created a community tradition that people rearranged their schedules to attend. Maria, a third-floor resident, explained it while assembling her taco. Look, I work 10 hours a day at a job I don't love. Most nights I eat frozen dinners alone. But Tuesday I get to hang out with my neighbors, eat good food, and pretend we're all at some kind of party. It's the best night of the week. But you could gather any day, X pointed out. Why does it matter that you designated Tuesday? Maria thought about this. I guess it doesn't matter which day. What matters is that we picked a day and stuck with it. Now it's our thing. It's something to look forward to. I recorded this exchange with growing frustration. She admits the designation is arbitrary, yet claims it provides value. This is paradoxical behavior. But X was starting to understand. The arbitrariness was the point. Humans didn't celebrate Taco Tuesday because tacos were objectively superior on Tuesdays. They celebrated because they chose to, and that choice transformed the experience. The shared decision created meaning where none had existed before. In Seattle, the team embedded with an office workplace for 2 weeks. The environment was sterile and efficient, with humans performing data processing tasks in standardized cubicles. By most measures, it was a depressing setting. Yet the humans who worked there consistently reported moderate to high job satisfaction. The key was celebration. When fixed the chronically malfunctioning printer that had plagued the office for months, her didn't simply thank her and return to work. They declared it saved us day and brought in. They created a crown from office supplies and made her wear it. They took pictures and posted them in the break room. For the next week, people referenced the event as if it were legendary. Remember when fixed the printer, that was amazing, and struggled to understand the proportionality. The printer repair required basic technical knowledge. Any qualified technician could have performed the same task. Why commemorate it? A named James overheard the question. Because it sucked when it didn't work and now it's great that it does. Made our lives better. That deserves recognition. But the recognition exceeds the achievement's significance, and protested. James grinned. Maybe, but it made feel good, it made us laugh, and now whenever we use that printer, we remember the day it got fixed and smile. Where's the harm in that? X realized there was no harm. That was the point. Humans didn't ration their joy, didn't reserve celebration for truly monumental occasions. They scattered it freely across ordinary days, marking small victories and minor milestones as if each one mattered. And by treating them as if they mattered, the humans made them matter. The most illuminating observation came from Austin, Texas, where the team lived with the family. On their third evening there, announced at dinner that tonight's meal would be breakfast for dinner night. The three children reacted as if she declared a holiday. They cheered. They helped prepare pancakes, eggs, and bacon at 1800 hours, well outside the standard breakfast time window. They set the table with extra care, adding flowers from the garden. The meal took twice as long as normal because everyone kept commenting on how fun and different it was to eat breakfast foods at dinner time. I pulled X aside. They're eating the exact same food they eat most mornings. The nutritional content is identical. The preparation methods are identical. Only the time has changed, yet they're acting as if this is a significant event. I know, X said, watching his youngest daughter, Sophia, giggle while drowning her pancakes in syrup. It makes no sense. I know. But X was beginning to think it made perfect sense, just not the kind of sense that could be measured with their equipment or explained in their reports. The humans weren't celebrating the food. They were celebrating the break from routine, the small rebellion of eating breakfast at dinner time, the shared joke of treating something ordinary as extraordinary. Later that evening, X asked about the tradition. Oh, we do breakfast for dinner once a month or so, explained while washing dishes. The kids love it, and honestly, it's easy. Plus, there's something kind of magical about breaking the rules, even silly rules like when you're supposed to eat certain foods. But you're not actually breaking rules, X said. No regulation prohibits consuming breakfast items during evening hours. Laughed. No, but there's this expectation, right? You eat eggs in the morning. You eat casserole or pasta for dinner. When you flip it, it feels special. It feels like you're doing something different, even though you're really not. So you trick yourself into feeling joy. Paused, considering this. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, kind of. We know it's not a big deal. We know it's just food at a different time, but we decide to make it fun anyway. Life's too short not to make your own fun, you know. That phrase kept appearing in interviews. Life's too short. Humans were acutely aware of their mortality, and somehow this awareness drove them to squeeze joy from every available opportunity. They didn't wait for happiness to arrive. They manufactured it. X compiled findings after 6 weeks of observation. The data painted a clear picture. Humans possessed no special technology, no genetic advantages, no pharmaceutical enhancements. Their happiness mechanism was purely psychological and entirely intentional. They consciously decided that ordinary moments deserved celebration, then acted on those decisions until the celebrations became real. I remained skeptical. This explains nothing. We need to understand why this technique works for humans when it wouldn't work for other species. But X suspected the technique would work for any species willing to try it. The question was whether other species could embrace the paradox, the conscious choice to invest meaning in arbitrary moments while simultaneously acknowledging that meaning was self-created. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during the team's final week in Portland. They invited the researchers to participate in what they called Family Game Night. This was apparently a weekly tradition, though the family admitted they'd only been doing it for 2 months. Emma read about family game nights in a book, Lisa explained while setting up a board game. She wanted to start doing it, so now every Friday night is game night. It's become our favorite part of the week. They played a game called Monopoly, which involved accumulating property and currency through chance and negotiation. X participated reluctantly, uncertain of the activity's purpose. The game had no practical application. Resources exchanged during play had no real value. Victory meant nothing beyond the game itself. Yet as the evening progressed, X found themselves getting invested in the outcome. When they successfully purchased a property that Robert wanted, X experienced a small surge of satisfaction. When Emma landed on one of their spaces and had to pay them game currency, X felt genuine pleasure at her theatrical groaning and dramatic collapse onto the table. It was absurd. X knew the game was meaningless. The victory would disappear the moment they put the board away. And yet, in that moment, it felt important. The competition felt real. The shared laughter felt valuable. When Jake finally won by bankrupting everyone else, the family cheered and took pictures of him grinning behind his massive pile of fake money. They would print these pictures and put them in an album. They would remember this night and reference it later. Remember when Jake destroyed us all at Monopoly? They would smile. X finally understood. They weren't naive. They knew game night was invented, that the tradition was arbitrary, that the activity was objectively pointless. But they chose to treat it as important anyway. They chose to make memories from nothing, to create shared experiences that would bind them together, to generate joy from cardboard and dice and togetherness. And because they all agreed to treat it as special, it became special. On the flight back to Confederation headquarters, X drafted the preliminary report. I reviewed it and shook her head. The Commission will never accept this. You're essentially claiming humans generate happiness through mass delusion. Not delusion, X corrected. Conscious choice. Humans understand that their celebrations are self-created, yet they commit to them fully. They don't wait for life to provide reasons for joy. They create their own reasons. N, who had been silent for most of the return journey, finally spoke. The question is whether this can be replicated. If we cannot teach other species to do what humans do naturally, then our research has no practical application. That was the question that would define everything that followed. Could you teach someone to celebrate arbitrary occasions? Could you systematize spontaneous joy? Could you schedule authentic happiness? The research team was about to find out. Part 3. The Happiness Commission reviewed the research team's findings in an emergency session that lasted 6 hours. Director examined the data with increasing agitation, his scales shifting through colors that indicated confusion and disbelief. You're telling me, said slowly, that humans achieve superior happiness metrics by pretending ordinary days are special, despite knowing they're pretending. It's more nuanced than that, X tried to explain. They're not exactly pretending. They're choosing to invest meaning in moments that don't inherently possess it. The key is that they do this consciously, collectively, and consistently. But this is irrational behavior, I added. She'd grown more skeptical during the return journey, convinced they'd missed some crucial element. No logical species would waste resources celebrating insignificant events. A commission member named spoke up. Yet it works. The data clearly shows humans experience more frequent joy than any species we've studied. If irrationality produces superior outcomes, perhaps we need to reconsider what we define as rational. The debate continued for hours. Some commission members dismissed the findings entirely. Others became fascinated by the implications, eventually called for order. We have a responsibility to address the wellness crisis affecting billions of citizens across the Confederation, he declared. If humans have discovered a technique for generating happiness, we must attempt to replicate it, regardless of how unconventional it seems. I'm authorizing pilot programs across multiple worlds. We'll teach our citizens to celebrate ordinary occasions and monitor the results. X felt uneasy. Director, I'm not certain this can be taught in a systematic way. The evidence suggests spontaneity is crucial to the mechanism's effectiveness. Then we'll systematize spontaneity, replied. Begin developing protocols immediately. The pilot programs launched 3 months later across 5 worlds. Each planet received detailed instructions on implementing human-style celebration protocols. The established designated joy intervals every 5th day. Citizens were instructed to gather, consume special foods, and express elevated mood states regardless of circumstances. The created mandatory celebration events on the 1st of each month, complete with prescribed activities and emotional responses. They developed an application that randomly assigned celebration themes to ordinary days, notifying citizens when they should feel happy about arbitrary topics. X watched the implementations with growing dread. The first reports came back within weeks. The pilot group found designated joy intervals awkward and artificial. Citizens gathered as instructed but struggled to generate authentic happiness on command. They stood together eating special food, waiting to feel something, increasingly aware that nothing was happening. Satisfaction scores didn't improve. In some cases, they declined, as citizens resented the mandatory joy sessions. The results were even worse. Mandatory celebration events created anxiety rather than happiness. Citizens stressed about performing celebration correctly, worried they weren't feeling enough joy, and grew exhausted from the effort of pretending to be happy. The events became obligations rather than pleasures, one more item on already overwhelming schedules. The application was a complete disaster. When citizens received notifications instructing them to celebrate "Today you woke up day" or "You successfully consumed food day," they found the prompts insulting rather than inspiring. The artificial nature of the assigned celebrations made them feel patronized. Many deleted the application within days. Called X to his office after the third wave of negative reports. Explain to me why this isn't working. You observed humans doing this successfully for weeks. We've implemented the same protocols exactly as you described them. That's the problem, X said carefully. We implemented protocols, but humans don't follow protocols for this. They don't celebrate because they're supposed to. They celebrate because they want to. Then we'll make them want to. Director, you can't mandate desire. The moment celebration becomes obligatory, it stops being celebration. It becomes work. Scales flashed frustrated red. Then what do you suggest? We can't simply tell citizens to spontaneously become happy like humans. That's not actionable advice. X had been thinking about this problem constantly since returning from Earth. I need to go back. I think I'm still missing something crucial about how this works. I objected immediately. We spent 2 months observing human behavior. How much more data do you need? I don't need more data, X said. I need to experience it myself. The commission granted approval reluctantly. X returned to Earth alone, this time not as a researcher but as a participant. They agreed to host the alien again, though they seemed puzzled about what more X hoped to learn. You watched us celebrate stuff, Jake said while helping X carry luggage to the guest room. What else is there? I watched, X agreed, but I didn't truly participate. I observed from outside the experience. This time I want to be inside it. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 3 days after X arrived, Emma burst into the house announcing she'd made the school soccer team. Robert and Lisa immediately declared this Emma's victory day and proposed going out for ice cream to celebrate. "It's Wednesday night," Lisa said. "We never go out on Wednesday, but this is special." They drove to a local ice cream shop. Emma ordered 3 scoops despite usually getting 1. Robert took pictures. Lisa called grandparents to share the news. They sat at a sticky table in a crowded shop, eating overpriced frozen dairy products, and everyone smiled. X watched Emma's face. The child was genuinely happy, practically glowing. But was it because she'd made the soccer team, or because her family had declared the achievement worthy of celebration? Would Emma feel as proud if everyone had simply said, "Good job," and moved on with their evening? "This is nice," X said carefully, but Emma would still be on the soccer team without the ice cream. "Sure," Robert agreed, consuming his mint chocolate chip. "But this way, she'll remember how it felt to make the team. Years from now, she'll think about this night. The ice cream makes the memory stick." X considered this. Humans use celebration not just to experience joy in the moment, but to mark memories, creating mental landmarks in the otherwise continuous flow of time. The ice cream was a bookmark. The photos were evidence. The ritual transformed an ordinary achievement into a story the family would tell. The real test came 2 weeks later. It was a Saturday morning and the family had no plans. No birthdays, no achievements, no external reason for joy. Rain pattered against windows. Robert worked on his laptop. Lisa sorted laundry. The kids lounged on the couch, absorbed in electronic devices. Then Emma looked up. "I'm bored, can we do something?" Lisa glanced outside at the gray sky. "Like what? It's gross out." Emma thought for a moment. "Let's have a movie marathon. We can make it fancy." "Fancy how?" Jake asked, suddenly interested. Emma's eyes lit up. "We can make popcorn and hot chocolate, and everyone has to wear their clothes, and we can build a blanket fort and make it like a special thing." There was a moment of consideration. X watched the family weigh the proposal. It would require effort. They'd have to rearrange furniture, prepare snacks, commit hours to the activity. It was objectively easier to continue their separate activities and treat Saturday as ordinary. Then Robert closed his laptop. "I'm in, but if we're building a fort, we're building the ultimate fort. Jake, grab all the blankets from the closet." What followed was 2 hours of construction, negotiation, and creative problem-solving. They stripped beds, moved furniture, and engineered an elaborate blanket structure that encompassed most of the living room. They argued about architecture. They laughed when sections collapsed. They worked together to build something completely unnecessary and utterly wonderful. X helped hold blankets while Robert secured them to chair backs. "This serves no practical purpose," X observed. "Nope," Robert agreed cheerfully. "That's what makes it fun." Once the fort was complete, they crawled inside with bowls of popcorn and mugs of hot chocolate. Lisa queued up movies on a tablet propped against pillows. The space was cramped and slightly uncomfortable, and they could have watched the same movies far more easily on the regular couch. But instead, they huddled in their blanket cave, watching the screen glow while rain fell outside. And X felt something unexpected, a warmth that had nothing to do with the blankets or the hot chocolate, a sense of belonging, of being part of something, of sharing a moment that would never exist again in quite this way. It was impractical and inefficient and wonderful. Emma leaned against X's arm during the second movie. "This is the best rainy day ever," she murmured. The day was identical to every other rainy day in measurable terms. Same temperature, same precipitation, same hours of daylight. But Emma was right. It was the best rainy day because they'd decided to make it that way. That was when X finally understood the thing they'd been missing all along. The Confederation had tried to teach celebration as a technique, a method for generating happiness. But celebration wasn't a tool. It was a choice. It was the decision to treat life as worth celebrating, to find joy not because circumstances justified it, but because joy itself was valuable. Humans didn't celebrate because they were happy. They were happy because they celebrated. And you couldn't teach that with protocols or schedules or mandatory events. You could only choose it, freely and repeatedly, whenever you decided life needed more joy than it was naturally providing. X returned to headquarters 1 month later with a final report that the commission found deeply unsatisfying. There was no replicable technique, no step-by-step instructions, no guarantee of results, just a simple observation. Humans had learned to generate their own happiness by refusing to wait for life to provide it. So your conclusion, said flatly, is that other species should just decide to be happy. Not exactly, X said. My conclusion is that happiness isn't something you achieve or optimize. It's something you create moment by moment through conscious choice. Humans excel at this because they treat ordinary days as worthy of celebration. They don't wait for truly special occasions. They make occasions special by choosing to celebrate them. And you can't teach this. I can describe it. I can provide examples. But ultimately, each individual has to decide for themselves whether to invest meaning in arbitrary moments. No one can mandate that choice. Looked tired. Then what was the point of this entire research initiative? X pulled up an image on the display screen. It showed the living room fort, blankets draped chaotically, pillows scattered everywhere, mugs of hot chocolate leaving rings on the coffee table. It was messy and impractical and beautiful. The point, X said, is that we now understand what we're missing. We've optimized life so efficiently that we've eliminated opportunities for this kind of spontaneous joy. We've scheduled everything, systematized everything, removed chaos and uncertainty. We made life comfortable but forgot to make it wonderful. I spoke up from the back of the room. So what do we tell people? That they should be more like humans? No, X said. We tell them they already have the capacity for this. Every species can choose to celebrate. We just have to stop waiting for permission or justification. We have to give ourselves permission to make ordinary days special. The commission didn't officially endorse this conclusion. They couldn't. It was too vague, too unpredictable, too human. But they published the research and let citizens draw their own conclusions. The changes came slowly, unevenly, and unexpectedly. A scientist named on read the report and decided that every Tuesday would be Notice Something Beautiful Day. He started taking pictures of things that caught his attention, sharing them with colleagues, pointing out details others might miss. Within a month, 36 had joined him. They weren't required to participate. They wanted to. A family invented soup that turned out good celebration after the parents successfully prepared a new recipe. They invited neighbors to taste it, made a toast to culinary experimentation, and laughed about the previous week's disaster meal. The celebration took 20 minutes and cost nothing. The family remembered it for years. An accountant started Survived Monday Club at her workplace. Every Monday afternoon, team members gathered for 15 minutes to drink tea and complain about Monday being Monday. It was technically counterproductive. Satisfaction scores in that office increased by 18%. These weren't mandated programs. They weren't optimized for maximum happiness output. They were spontaneous, imperfect, and deeply human attempts by non-humans to create joy where none had existed before. X received messages from across the Confederation. Some people thanked the research team for validating what they'd always felt, that life needed more celebration than it naturally provided. Others criticized the findings as promoting irresponsible frivolity. Most people simply read the report and went on with their lives, unchanged. But some people, just enough people, started making different choices. 6 months after publishing the final report, X received a message from Director. "You should see this," it read, with an attached video file. The video showed the commission's headquarters cafeteria. Dozens of workers from multiple species sat together at tables. Someone had brought in food from different cultures. Someone else had created decorative banners from office supplies. Everyone wore colorful accessories that served no practical purpose. The caption read, "It's Friday, so we declared it Celebrate Friday Day. Next week we might celebrate Tuesday. Why not?" X watched the video 3 times. The celebration was imperfect, slightly awkward, and absolutely genuine. No one had mandated this gathering. No protocol had prescribed it. Workers from efficiency-obsessed species had simply decided that this Friday deserved to be special, and that decision made it so. It wasn't a solution to the Confederation's wellness crisis. It wasn't a cure for the abundance paradox, but it was a start. X thought about thee and their blanket fort, about Emma's soccer team ice cream, about breakfast for dinner night. They thought about how humans scattered joy across ordinary days like seeds, not knowing which moments would take root but planting them anyway, trusting that some would grow into memories worth keeping. Maybe that was the real lesson. Not that humans had discovered some trick for generating happiness, but that they'd learned to stop waiting for life to provide reasons for joy. They created their own reasons, celebrated their own moments, and treated each ordinary day as potentially extraordinary. And perhaps, slowly, the rest of the galaxy was learning to do the same. X opened a new message to the, "Thank you for teaching me that every day can be special if you decide it should be. I'm declaring today Appreciate Humans Day. I'm celebrating with hot chocolate." Lisa's response came an hour later. "That's awesome. We're celebrating your awesome day over here. Jake says to tell you we're having tacos in your honor." X felt that warm sensation again, that sense of connection and joy and meaning created from nothing but shared intention. They smiled, an expression they'd learned from humans, and decided that today was definitely worth celebrating. After all, life was too short to wait for special occasions. Sometimes you just had to make your own.